Alright, everybody. We're going to get started. Second video of the night, of the day, sorry. I'm going to go with, these are the top 5 locks. Alright, and I'm just doing top 5. And again, I'll put all the rest of the guys that I have down the bottom. The guys that just missed out, and obviously you're going to pick 3 locks. You're going to pick 3 locks. And probably 4 locks if you're going to pick like a squad. You'll probably pick 4 locks and then like a tall blindside or something like that. And so I've kind of picked the guys that I think would be better at lock rather than any other position, because you can kind of fit them around. And so obviously, starting with my top 5 locks, I went with Shea from King's College. I went from Taylor Cahill from Hamilton Boys. I went with Andrew Smith from St. Peter's School, Cambridge. I went with Peter Kahu from New Plymouth Boys, and I went for Te Ma Schmidt from Scots College as well as my top 5 locks in the country. As a whole, with all these 5 guys, from my recollection, and whenever I did like my team of the week, and I'd seen all of their games every single week, they were always part of like the bracket of guys that I thought had good games. And so when I look back at my team of the weeks, and I always noticed that those 5 guys always showed up, those were the reasons why I have those guys in my top 5. Shea Clark, obviously, as my number 1, as it's like, do you either play him at blindside or do you play him at lock? And in this instance, I have him at lock, mainly because when I looked at the full list of who I'd want in my New Zealand secondary school team, having him at lock benefited other talent to be on the field at the same time if he was at lock and not at blindside. And so having Shea, who's 6'6", 6'7" almost, I think, him and Taylor at lock, both at locks, both highly athletic, highly fit, high work rate, hard hitters, both carry the ball really, really well. I think Shea plays better out on the edge, where I think Taylor plays better in and around the rucks. But at the same time, if you were to switch them, I don't think there's a drop-off from either way, depending who plays out wide. So for me, like, any guy that you choose to jump in a line out at that time, once that he comes down, he just drops back into being the guy who plays the edge while the other one runs down and sort of joins the ruck and then has the ball come back, and then they're now the main runner out on the edge to create that mismatch after a line out. And that part alone, and that's pretty much what both of those guys do anyway within their teams, is that a lot of the slack that Shea used to get, and from people who used to talk to me, it's like, how is he ranked that high? It's like, they're going, he hangs out too much. I was like, and on the edge, I was like, well, that's his job. He's doing exactly what the coach told him to do. It's got nothing to do with he doesn't want to do hard work. If you tell him to do hard work, he'll get in there and blow everybody out. He'll go in there and just smash everybody who's in front of him. That's not the problem with him. Like, the problem is not that he decides to stay out there. The call is, you get in the line out, you take that first ball, drop it down to your halfback, the play goes, you stay back with a prop in like a blind side or open side or something, and then you guys are the next pod to bring the ball back straight away, and then you're there to counter the weak defense that's going to be in front of you, who's going to be a winger and a prop that didn't want to run, and then like a center or someone like that. Things like that. And so Shea's strength and his value that he adds to a team, honestly, with if you just tell someone to watch him, you don't have to explain it. Just watch him. I don't have to explain what he brings to your team. You just watch him and be like, yeah, that's easy. For one, like the physical side, I was like, man, this dude's like 6'6", 6'7". He's like a freaking monster. He's like cut up, big, big for a kid that's not even like in his adult body. Once he starts doing weights, he is going to be sort of like Nelson Asofa Solomon, depending on where he goes to. Like, I don't even know if he's even signed with rugby yet, or if he wants to go to league, because he could go on either code. But regardless is that once he starts building that muscle, and that real muscle that that he will get as an adult, like there's not much people that are going to stop him. There's not much people going to stop him in rugby or in league. And then the discussion is going to be like, is he a lock or is he a blindside? And he may be a Stephen Luatua type where you're just like, I kind of don't really know. Vai Fafita kind of like, it's like, well, he's tall enough to play lock. Like, what do we do with him? And it doesn't matter kind of where you put him. It's just like, yeah, he's going to be the value that you want anyway. He's going to give you that value. Taylor's kind of the same too. Taylor Cahill at this, my second one is just like, he's the same as Shea. It's just like, well, it doesn't really matter where we're putting him. Like, we don't, like, you kind of, after a while, after a few games that, people started seeing of Hamilton boys, I guess the general consensus was the fact that it's like, just don't run it at Taylor. Like, you're not going to really get that far if he decides to hit you. And he hits hard. And he knocked himself out too. Like, when he was making a tackle in total, like, that's why he got taken off the field, is because he pretty much went in hard to a guy that was stepping back in and just, wrong positioning, really. That was like the worst thing that I've seen him do in a rugby game. And it had nothing to do with rugby. It was just like, it's just something that happens. You go in for a tackle, the guy steps at the same time. The timing is, is just not your fault either. And then he had to miss the next 2-3 weeks or something like that. But Taylor's going to give you everything. He's just, putting them, especially within that top 5 ranking of players, saying which one is better, changing their position is just like, yeah, I don't know, just flip a coin. Like, they're both kind of there. Like, I honestly wouldn't know who, if me and someone else had to go, well, you take one and I'll take the other, I'll be like, whatever, pick one, and I would be like happy with whoever I get, because both of them add that kind of value and that fear, and just both big time talents, both big time talents. And if there was a NPC draft and like I was one of the lowest teams, I'll be like, yeah, I don't care you're picking number 1, as long as you get one of those two. If I'm in the top 3, I'm happy. If I'm in the top 4, I'm happy, actually, because, the way that the top 5 is like, yeah, big time players. Taylor, Cahill, and Shea, to me, are like big time players, and players that you really want on your team, players that you really want in your franchise. Really hard-working guys behind the scenes. They work off the field and they try and get better at, make their game better and try and do things to benefit their rugby. And so in those cases, I'll be happy with any of them, I'll be happy with any of those guys. My third one was Andrew Smith, St. Peter's School. And this guy, and Andrew is young year 13. He is able to come back next year if he wants to. I don't think he is, but if he wanted to, he could. And he was one of the guys that I didn't know whether he would be a better lock than blindside or a better blindside than lock. I know that this whole year he's been playing lock, but out of necessity for the team and being able to fit everyone on the field, he would be, I guess, more value to his team if he was at lock, to make sure that they fit other guys who are talented, who have a lot of talent, and you just don't want that talent sitting on the bench for 40 minutes or so until you get them on the field. And so, like, I think that he played a lock out of necessity for the team, but his ability to run around the field and be able to keep up with people, especially like the back line and stuff like that, he can. I don't think it won't be hard for him to adapt to blindside if he had to play blindside at any time in his career. But in terms of first thing, I would put him on my bench if I had New Zealand secondary schools. And just very reliable, very hardworking, great over the ball. Actually, he was actually one of the better locks with turnovers over the ball, even holding guys up. When runners, those runners that think that they're running like league players run too high, he was easily getting up under them, their arms, under the ball, holding them up, and there was always turnovers like that he just picked out really quickly, and they got good turnover ball just from him doing that. Peter Kahu, who's my fourth one from New Plymouth Boys, is the other one that I like his size, I like his height, I like his work rate, I like the tight game that he gives. He's not one of those guys that hangs out on the edge or anything like that, but when it comes down to just grunt work and moving bodies and just a high work rate, he's one of the guys that I'd want there. Solid on defense as well, real heavy shoulders, doesn't back down, and that's kind of like what I like in my locks as well. Like all the mobility and agility that some of these players have that's cool. But to me, like I want them to take care of their core roles as a lock first, and then all the other stuff is just extra stuff. But he's one of those guys that I liked every single week that I watched them play. To me, he always stood out. And then Te Ma Schmidt, who's my fifth player, from Scots College, is also the same thing. He just stood out. Always had breaks. Always broke the line. Always had a good running game, but also did not shy away from hard work around the rucks as well. And to me, a lot of the times that they were succeeding was based off something that he did within his team and within his role. He was always holding up players. He was always getting turnovers, getting over the ball pretty quickly. His run game was crazy good, and just being able to have good timing onto the ball and then hitting the line, things like that. And I think this asset on the team is just too big to give up if you have a player that's like that. Again, he's another guy that I don't know whether he's going to go to league or stay with rugby, but either way, I think he's going to have he's going to be pretty successful in whatever he picks. The guys that kind of missed out, Tommy Hamilton from Selwyn Schools. He's probably one I only saw 3 times this year. And that was only because other teams that I had seen were actually just playing them, and so I got to see him there as well. And his physical side of it, being 6'7", almost 6'8" or so, he's like a solid guy. He's not a skinny guy. He's actually pretty solid. I thought he was skinny before until I saw him play, and I thought, oh, okay. And I sized him up against someone that I've seen before. I was like, oh, okay. He's not actually as skinny as I thought he was. But he's another guy that just does his job. Really tall, great line-out guy. Heavy work rate as well, which I really like. Doesn't shy away from the physical stuff as well. And just, takes it out. He's not overbearingly physical, but he doesn't shy away from it. There's like a difference. Okay, so he was one. Matthew Monaghan was another one I like from King's College, who I just think is one of those, high work rate grunt workers. And he's kind of the guy that's just like, I just want you to make 15 tackles and just get your head into it. And he just does it, and that's what I really liked about him. Max Bryant was the other one from Gisborne Boys. Actually, both of the boys from the locks from Gisborne, him and Tyler Keenan Phillips was the other one that I really liked too. Both really tall locks, around 6'5", 6'6" kind of guys, but really mobile around the field and good line-out guys. I think in terms of best line-out jumpers or best line-out or lock pairing, I think those two would have been close to the 2 best together in the country, regardless of how their record looked for Gisborne Boys. I think those 2 together was probably one of the best lock pairings in the country. And so I think those 2 together and the way that they played the game together, I thought that those 2 were great, and the way that they did it and what they actually were able to do. And then we have some year 12s, and so I already mentioned that Andrew Smith is a young year 13 and is able to come back if he wanted to return. And then we got guys like Jacob Mitchell from New Plymouth Boys High, who I've got the highest respect for in terms of what he can do on the field. He's going to be one of the top blocks coming back next year. Daniel Langalanga Slater is going to be the other one from Manurewa High School, and he's another one that I really like as well. His size and his height is I'm just keen to see what he does next year. And if he comes back really, really fit and really built and solid, and I mean he's got an older brother that's already been through all of this and knows exactly what's expected. If he gets into shape exactly like rep teams want him to look like, and he does it and he comes back really strong, man, it's gonna he's really gonna change the game especially within that locking position. And then the other one is Ben Skelton, who's from Mags, is the other one that I like a lot. And I've liked his game ever since he was under 15s, and just his athleticism around the field and a high work rate, and just a solid kid who just puts in some of that heavy shoulder work in some of these defenses. And I think that those boys coming back next year also does, it really does to me crowd and really enrich that position, that locking position, with just those guys coming back. And these are just the ones that I've sort of set aside as guys that I think are some of the top rated locks in the country right now. Those are just the ones that I've named, not the ones that I actually, these year 12s are just down the list a little bit, who just takes a summer, like I've said before, it just takes a summer for some of these boys, and they just shoot up. Like, some of these boys can grow an extra 3 inches, and build themselves up over the summer. And, we've got a totally different player after that, and that's what I'm interested in seeing. I mean, Taylor was the same. Last year, Peter Cahill was the same. Peter Cahill last year was skinny. Came back and he just looked so solid. And Te Ma Schmidt was the same. Skinny guy, real mobile and stuff. But when he came back this year, you could see how big and solid he was. And so, like, all these kind of guys, I'm really excited to see exactly what they come back like, all these year 12s, and just seeing what they're like. But for me, this year alone, Shea Clark, Taylor Cahill, Andrew Smith, Peter Kahu, and Te Ma Schmidt are the top 5 locks for me. I think if they were going to do it again, just like they did last year with the New Zealand Barbarians and New Zealand secondary schools, having that black and white jersey. Oh, black and white or black and red? Whatever the jersey's colours was. If they're going to pick, the 2 squads like that, I think they would pick somewhere around 8 locks, maybe 7 locks, and then do the same thing that I was talking about before, where they'll get tall blind sides and all that kind of stuff, and sort of just mix it around and put them together and be like, what can we do? How can we make this work, and all that kind of stuff too, because there's just so much talent around the country. And I think sometimes I think we struggle a lot for locks, and they struggle a lot for like height. But then we got who's it? Jaden Sarr is like one, and Sione Latu is another one. All these year 11 kids, those kind of guys that you kind of think, who are these next guys coming through? And like, those are the kind of guys that you sort of look to, and I think it's kind of a bit easier, because then you still got what's his name? Bailey Carmichael is the other one. Jack Rusk is the other one from St. Paul's Collegiate, and Bailey from Rotorua Boys, and so having even those guys added to it, added to the year 12s from this year, next year's lot of players is going to be a huge amount and really good quality. And so, it's going to be cool to see what comes back next year, and, how all these boys look, and how, everyone develops and stuff. But that's my top 5 for my locks, and we'll be back tomorrow for our blindsides, and trying to separate who's a blindside, who's a number 8, and who's an open side, because I think they can get a bit interesting. And I guess preference is always that kind of stuff too, of like, what are you actually looking for in those positions, and what kind of things you value and like at the same time, because it's always going to be different depending whose opinion you're listening to. But that's me, Herschel Fruin, High School Top 200. Peace.